number 3 of Dining Around with Gene Burns. It is the final day of July, July 31st, a Saturday. We're here until 1 o'clock talking food, wine, and travel. I've been doing a dining program of one kind or another since 1981, so I've been at it for a fair amount of time. You cover a lot of territory in food and wine and travel in that period of time. But I must say, the subject about which we are now to speak is something about which I know virtually nothing. This past week was Peruvian Independence Week, and that came to our attention, and we decided we should do something related to that. Of course, you no doubt have heard of the drink Pisco and the Pisco Sour, which is well known, comes from Peru, and there's a very popular restaurant here in San Francisco called Destino, which is a Peruvian restaurant. So we are joined by representatives of Destino, James Schenk, who is executive chef and co-owner, and Guillermo Toro-lira, who is a co-owner and a historian as well, and Dugan McDonald, who is a mixologist and owner of the Cantina at 580 Sutter Street here in San Francisco. And we are going to explore together this idea of Peru and Peruvian cuisine and Pisco, the drink of Peru. And did I get that right? It was this past week, Peruvian Independence Week?
Wednesday the 28th.
This past Wednesday the 28th, Peruvian Independence Day. Now, if you had to describe the cuisine of Peru, how would you describe it?
Peruvian cuisine is probably one of the most incredibly diverse cuisines that you can find. Over the past 500 years, there have been so many different influences from the Spanish, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Italians, the Africans, a little bit of everything. And the really amazing thing about it is you can really see all the integration in all their dishes. So you can really kind of go back in time and look at when milk and dairy was introduced, for example. There's a town called Arequipa, which is in the southern part of Peru. They have a sauce called ocopa, which is a peanut sauce made with a little bit of hot pepper called ají amarillo, but it's a cream-based sauce. And that was introduced right after the time that the Spaniards came in and kind of introduced dairy and produce along those lines as well. So it's really kind of amazing because the one thing about Peruvian Creole-style cuisine is they've literally just kind of layered on top of layered all of their different influences over time.
Now, when you say Peruvian Creole, we know Creole, of course, from New Orleans, the Creole cuisine of Louisiana, the Bayou country. What do you mean by Creole?
Creole, when I say Creole, it's more the Spanish influence with the indigenous Peruvians as well too. So the indigenous Peruvians up in the Andes, for example, the Incas, they were very well versed in agriculture. Right. They had a lot of tiered kind of really wonderful aggregation systems with their crops, which were mainly potatoes and quinoa. Quinoa is a grain really high in fiber, really high in protein. And
that's Peruvian quinoa?
That's Peruvian, yeah, exactly. And potatoes are Peruvian as well, too. And potatoes were actually introduced to the Europeans back during that time as well. Right. So it's really kind of interesting that you can see the base and how the base started and then how it evolved from that point on out.
I would think that when you opened a Peruvian restaurant, it was considered either cutting edge or gutsy or both.
It was a little bit of both because honestly, when I was working on my business plan back in the mid-90s, I was going to do Spanish cuisine because back in the day, 96, 97, there was restaurants Sol y Luna, Barcelona, downtown. They're actually down here. And from that point, I decided to go the South American route because it was unknown. And there were a couple little hole-in-the-wall places, but really it was a pretty open market in the sense to really introduce Latin flavors from the get-go. Within the past 5 years here, Peruvian restaurants have become an abundancy all over the Bay Area, which has been wonderful because it's really introducing different flavors and palates.
Does Peru have a national dish?
They have a lot of national dishes, actually. Ceviche, which is, I brought you a little sample of ceviche today, which is kind of a marinated fish salad. Has a little bit of hot pepper, ají amarillo, which is yellow hot pepper, some cilantro, red onion, a little bit of lime juice as well, too. Right. And so the citric acid is actually what cures the fish.
Yeah. We're talking with James Schenk, who's executive chef and co-owner of Destino Restaurant. We're also going to talk about, there's a connection, a San Francisco-Peru connection with regard to Pisco as well, and we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about how you use Pisco and how you mix it into drinks. All of that ahead here on Dining Around with Gene Burns. KGO time now is 12:17. Just got a lovely hit of coriander as I bit in. It's having some of the ceviche that the folks from Destino Restaurant brought along. Let's talk about Pisco now. There is a San Francisco, Peru connection. Guillermo Toro-Lira is an historian as well as being co-owner of Destino Restaurant. And Guillermo, apparently Pisco came to San Francisco on ships that came up. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. They came on ships amazingly during the first exploration of the San Francisco Bay with the navigator Francisco Bodega y Cuadra. He brought Pisco from Lima, and his memory endures forever in the name Bodega Bay. And Bodega
that's from him. Is that right?
It's from him. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize
right,
that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the presence on Pisco continued during the Californian days of the Californios, the Spanish and the Mexican. Right. Several importers of Pisco appear, mainly English, some Italians, and Pisco was a very popular drink here in San Francisco.
Now, I suppose I sort of got the cart before the horse, which is my fault. We should tell people what is Pisco?
Okay, Pisco is a grape brandy. Made originally in the port of Pisco, Peru, in the 1600s, like 20 years before the founding of Boston.
Right.
So you have an idea more or less how old it is.
Right.
And it's a grape brandy, unaged. So you cannot add anything to it. You cannot age it on oak. You cannot even add water. So the Peruvian regulation is very strict on it. It's only all the liquor comes from the essence of the grape fermentation.
And all of this, as I understand the story, necessitated by a ruling of King Philip II.
That's correct.
That no wine could be produced in Peru.
Exactly, you got it right, yes.
Is that because they didn't want competition?
Exactly. It was a very strict monopoly, Spanish monopoly.
Right.
So the Peruvian wine started to be so good and cheap because it didn't have to come from Spain, so there was a transportation cost benefit.
Right.
So they started to displace the Spanish wine, and King Philip, he decided to ban the manufacturing of wine in Peru.
Right.
So what did the Peruvians do? Pisco.
And well, now we have a mixologist. We just happen to have a mixologist with us here. Good planning on our part. Dugan McDonald, who is the mixologist and owner of Cantina on Sutter Street in San Francisco. So, Dugan, do Piscos vary in taste depending on the producer? Because what Guillermo says, they can't do any oak, they can't do any additions, they can't even add water. So Pisco is Pisco is Pisco. So how do they vary if they vary?
Hi, Gene. I just want to say, of course they vary. Of course they vary. And to confirm exactly what Guillermo has said, that you cannot alter the flavor profile of Pisco in any way by adding water, distilling it more than once, putting it in a barrel. And Pisco is actually the most terroir-driven spirit, meaning the grape is the ultimate expression of where it comes from. So if it comes from a different place within a vineyard, or from a different province, or if it's coming from a different grape, of course it's going to throw off a different flavor profile.
So you don't have to. You can make Pisco from a different grape variety. You don't have to use the same.
You can use 8 different varietals.
Yeah, there are 8 that are legitimate. And these are all Peruvian varietals?
Indeed. They were brought over from Spain, from the port of Jerez, nearly 500 years ago as seeds. Viticulture happened, and as Guillermo said, Pisco began being distilled about 400 years ago.
Do we know from the history of cocktails after Pisco came here, do we know how it was first used? Was it used neat, or was it immediately crafted into cocktails?
I would say both, and a lot of it. So, of course, they were making punches. Ponches de Pisco existed in Lima, and because California has always had such a strong Peruvian connection and population, particularly during the Barbary Coast era, the Pisco Punch became the signature cocktail of San Francisco. But also, it was the most glamorous spirit, in the Pacific Western Hemisphere. So people were drinking it, sipping it as a shot, as a celebratory action.
Yeah. It's interesting because until prepping for this interview, I don't think it's generally acknowledged that Pisco has such an important place in San Francisco's mixological history, if that's a word. I've never heard it talked about in the context of San Francisco.
Since Prohibition, we've forgotten it.
Yeah, I guess. Well, we've forgotten a lot of things since Prohibition, some of which are best left forgotten, quite frankly. We'll continue our conversation about the food and Pisco and its various components just ahead here on Dining Around with Gene Burns. KGO time now is 12:26 on Dining Around with Gene Burns. We're talking about Peruvian cuisine, Destino Restaurant and Pisco, their bar lounge right next door, and Cantina. Now I just discovered that Dugan is a Pisco producer. How long have you been producing Pisco?
We've been working on it for a couple of years, Gene, and we first distilled the Vendimia, the harvest, in March of 2009, and then again this past March.
And so it's available in the market now?
Yes, sir.
What's the brand?
Campo de Encanto.
Campo de Encanto.
Means the field of enchantment.
And if you turn the bottle around and look at the back of the label through the clear liquid, which is the Pisco, there's an historic photograph there.
Yeah, that's taken
cool.
on Pacific Street, just a few blocks away here from our station at 1938.
Did I hear you say you were going to shake up a Pisco sour?
I'm going to shake up a Pisco punch, San Francisco's
Pisco
historic cocktail, if I may do so.
I'm wondering what's taking you so long. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, we're running out of time. I want to.
Let's get shaking.
There you go. Absolutely. All right. The magic sound of a cocktail shaker shaking. And this is Pisco Punch. And is this a San Francisco drink now, Dugan?
Indeed it is, and I'm actually sitting next to the world's principal authority on Pisco and Pisco cocktails, and Guillermo can tell you all about the Pisco Punch.
Right.
Guillermo, you're on.
Yeah, let me tell you, Gene, what people said about Pisco Punch.
Okay.
This by Pauline Jacobson in 1912. She was a reporter for the Chronicle. One authority claims one punch will make a gnat fight an elephant. Others maintain it flows them in the region of bliss of hashish and absinthe. Oliver Perry Stringer in 1930, he mentioned that it was like the scimitar of Harun, whose edge was so fine that after a slash, a man walked on unaware that his head had been severed from his body until his knees gave away and he fell to the ground dead. Then Harold Ross, the founder of the New Yorker magazine, when he was in San Francisco, he said, used to take like lemonade, but had a kick of vodka or worse. Finally, Robert O'Brien, the famous reporter of San Francisco, he said, it was like a lemonade, but came back with a kick of a rope steer.
It's actually very good. It's delicious. It doesn't have any. I expected it would have a raw edge to it because it's in a sense unrefined, directly distilled. But it does. It has a very nice taste to it.
Thank you, Gene.
Yeah. What's in it in addition to the Pisco? Or is that a secret?
It is a secret. No, but the Pisco Punch is the most infamous cocktail in history, only because the principal marketeer, if you will, a gentleman by the name of Duncan Nickel, who tended a bar here, the Bank Exchange, some 120 to 50 years ago, would make it behind the curtain, if you will. And he told folks that he wouldn't share the recipe. He went to the grave with the recipe. But I, of course, have a recipe that I share with folks, if you'd like to know.
Yeah, okay, tell us.
For everyone at home, I think that it essentially, to make a really delicious Pisco Punch at home, you think of it like a sidecar or a margarita. Okay?
Right.
It's 2 parts Encanto Pisco, 1 part fresh lime juice, 1 part pineapple juice, and 1 part triple sec. Like a pineapple pisco-rita, if you will. Yeah. It's delicious. Everyone knows how to make that at home.
Yeah. And you serve these, obviously, at Cantina.
Of course. We have a delicious Pisco Punch there. Also, at James and Guillermo's Pisco Latin Lounge.
Where is your brand of Pisco available, sold?
You can certainly buy it at some of our favorite liquor stores around town, such as Cask or K&L, and of course the Jug Shop, our friends there. But Lamar Cevicheria,
right?
Pisco Lounge, the new Comstock, the new Prospect, Tyler Florence's new Wayfair Tavern.
Oh, terrific. Yeah.
Many places.
Yeah. Terrific. All right, so we've got the drink. Now let's back to you. What about what days is the restaurant open?
Yeah, the restaurant, we're open 7 days a week for dinner, 5 till 10 o'clock at night, the weekends 5 till 11.
No lunch?
No lunch.
Right.
No lunch.
Okay.
And then our lounge right next door, focusing on Pisco, is open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 5 till midnight, till 1 o'clock on the
Telephone number?
Telephone number is area code 415-552-4451. And our website is destinosf.com as well, too. And for the bar, it's piscosf.com.
All right, so the telephone number, 415-552-4451, and destinosf.com or piscosf.com.
Exactly.
Does Cantina have a website?
Yes, indeed. It's cantinasf.com, and Encanto is Encanto with an E, EncantoPisco.com.
EncantoPisco.com. Very revelatory. Wow, I said that after a drink, too. That's terrific. Thank you all for joining us.
You're welcome.
Very interesting. Peruvian cuisine, it's hot. It's hot. It's the in cuisine at the moment. And Pisco, a connection going all the way back to the 1500s with San Francisco from Peru.